Welcome back to MMA Al Dente. I am the guy who picked Dustin Jacoby to defeat Azamat Murzakanov, and I'll get to that fight in a few minutes. But I'm here to recap the main card for UFC on ESPN 44, I think. I don't know. Max Holloway versus Arnold Allen. I'm going to start with that fight. Max Holloway proved once again he is number 2 in the world, or maybe number 1 since Volkanovski is C. I don't like those fucking rankings. I liked it when the champion was just number 1 and the number 1 contender was number 2. But anyway, Max Holloway, he definitely proved to be in his prime here. There were doubts about him coming into this fight, and I expressed a few doubts myself despite picking him to win. I saw what everybody else saw. He had slowed down against Volkanovski, which, yeah, that's the best fighter in the world maybe, but Holloway still fought him 3 times, relatively close together, not jammed together, but in the same era anyway. And the last one wasn't close, so things were trending one way based on that series. But other than that, we've seen Max Holloway, fight top contenders, Yair Rodriguez recently, and Calvin Kattar, whenever, some time ago. And these guys are all top contenders, and Arnold and Max Holloway shuts them down. Shuts them down, these guys. And Arnold Allen, he's in that realm, and this was a similar type of fight where competitive, it was competitive. You could argue that Arnold Allen won 2 rounds, and you could argue that the other rounds were close. But I don't think you could make the argument with a straight face that Arnold Allen won this fight. Max Holloway was definitely winning this fight. Round 2 was kind of close. Max really started battling his way back into that after Allen had a good start. And then round 5, you can give to Allen, although Max dropped him at the very end. So, whatever. But still, it was a competitive fight throughout the whole fight. I did think Arnold Allen proved to be on Max's level. Maybe not on his level precisely, but within the realm of beating him. And he was. But much like those other guys, Calvin Kattar, Brian Ortega, Yair Rodriguez, whoever, these guys have all been denied. Everybody but Volkanovski. And Max Holloway, he's 31 years old. Chin as good as it ever was. And speed was the primary factor in his victory here tonight. So he's as sharp as ever. Excellent win for Max. He's got to hope that Yair wins this fight against Volkanovski, which Yair can definitely do. That guy is such a unique fighter and a dangerous guy everywhere. And if that happens, or if anybody beats Volkanovski, I want to think Holloway is probably right in line for a title shot. After Volkanovski, of course, which, I think Volkanovski has probably earned an immediate rematch at this point. But still, I don't think Max gets a 4th fight with Volk ever. But and I guess I shouldn't say ever, but it's very unlikely. But I do think he gets a title shot immediately as soon as one is, reasonable, because he's clearly number 2 in the world. For Arnold Allen, he's still young, even though he's only 2 years younger than Max, but he's still going, and I think he's still getting better. A lot, less miles on him than Max Holloway, and I think Arnold Allen is probably 2 wins away from a title shot himself, especially if Volkanovski remains champion. If Volk remains champion, Arnold Allen can go around Max Holloway, kind of like Yair Rodriguez did. But to do that, he's going to have to beat some good guys like Brian Ortega and Josh Emmett. Those are the guys that Yair beat. Even though the Emmett fight was for titles, for the interim title. So I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Maybe they'll just take him 1 fight. But no, he proved to be in the realm of beating Max, but not there yet. Max was the better man tonight, and this was a damn good main event. Edson Barboza knocked out Billy Quarantillo. That was fucking phenomenal. Edson Barboza, he got a beautiful step-in knee victory. I won't call it a flying knee or whatever, but it was, or jumping knee like he hit on Beneil Dariush, but it was a beautifully dangerous strike. Edson was the more dangerous athlete, the sharper athlete, but Billy Quarantillo was in his face looking to, get that 3rd round finish. That's how it looked in round 1. Billy was all over him, and Edson was doing well defensively, even though there was still a lot of pressure there from Billy. And Edson caught him with his hands down, hit him with a beautiful step-in knee, and shut the lights off pretty much. Billy Quarantillo face planted anyway, so, it fucked him up. And Edson pounced on him. It was his finest victory in a long time, maybe even since the Beneil Dariush fight. And at 37 years old, fucking, I don't want to say it's his last great moment because he's still got some fights ahead of him. But even if it is, it was exceptional because I was picking against Billy Quarantillo, and I'm a big fan of Edson Barboza, and I'm a believer in him, just clearly not that big of a believer because Billy Quarantillo had me convinced he was going to win this fight. And Billy, he's only been knocked out once before this, the Michel Quinones, former UFC fighter. But it can happen. It hasn't happened since. But Edson proved to be that next level, and got a big win. This may have not have made sense betting wise, but historically this makes sense. Edson Barboza, I do think, will go down as the better fighter than Billy Quarantillo. Not that I'm trying to shit on Billy, and he's still got work to do despite being 34 years old. But Edson needed a big moment like this, and he got it. Fucking phenomenal victory, and reliable co-main eventer, Edson Barboza. If he doesn't give you a violent moment, one way or the other, he's going to give you a war. So he's always reliable, and he produced. For Billy, it's tough. It's not like he's, that long in the tooth. But again, he's 34 years old. He's got a good amount of mileage on him. And now he got a pretty bad loss here. It was a high-profile fight, co-main event, so the UFC does believe in him, and he's able to scratch and claw his way back. I'm sure he'll get some shine on him again, but this is going to, knock him down a peg or two. We'll see what happens, but I'm a big fan of Billy Quarantillo. Azamat Murzakanov beats Dustin Jacoby, and he beats him by decision. I thought he clearly won the first two rounds, and Jacoby won the third round. I actually thought the second round was pretty close, but then Azamat stole it in the final moments. And he may have been on his way to winning that, even clearly, for all I know, because I do feel like, he was winning that round. But Jacoby was battling his way back in, and he made it closer in the end. And then Azamat, who is very fucking dangerous and definitely had an athletic advantage here, even though Dustin Jacoby is a bigger man and maybe even the stronger guy. Azamat was the faster man, and he caught him, I forget what he caught him with, but he dropped him at the end of round two, and at the end of the 15 minutes, that was the crucial moment. And Azamat got the decision. Jacoby was pouring it on in the end. Not quite like Arnold Allen in round 5, but he knew he was down, I believe. And despite being hurt, he made a good effort. But Murzakanov, he's never been defeated. I expected him to lose here, but I thought he'd be losing the point battle, which it became clear early on that, no, I underestimated his athleticism and his striking prowess overall. And he had the advantage in the point battle. And that's despite 5 inches of height, 7 inches of reach, which I don't know if that's right, but I wrote that down anyway. That's probably from Tapology, by the way. But great win from Murzakanov. He's now 13-0. He didn't get the finish over Jacoby, but he came close. And still, to get any sort of a victory over Jacoby, who arguably could have been on a 7-fight winning streak, if that last decision went his way, this win means something. It means something, and it's his finest victory, despite having not gotten the finish in his third UFC fight here. For Jacoby, he's 35 years old, still wasn't finished, and was in a competitive fight here. He made it competitive in round 3, but he's got more work to do. It sucks for him to lose a battle, especially on the feet. Speaking of which, Iwan Kutalaba takes out Tanner Boser. This one, I don't want to say I did not see it coming. It's certainly not what I predicted, but Iwan Kutalaba is a first-round monster. He's a first-round monster. The guy is just a seek and destroy fighter. And Tanner Boser, he's a historically very tough guy. Again, he was only knocked out once, and it was in a few seconds to Tim Hague, who's a big, strong heavyweight. But Tanner Boser, he was hit by a big shot from Iwan Kutalaba, and while he did kind of recover, he didn't recover well enough to defend himself. And you could argue it was a bad stoppage, which it might have been. It reminded me of Cain Velasquez versus Ben Rothwell, UFC 104. But still, he was taking repeated shots to the head and may not have looked that bad on camera, but in person, listening to Iwan Kutalaba just destroy somebody, it probably made a lot of sense to stop that fight because, again, he wasn't defending himself very well, even if he was trying to get up. But if he did get up, I still think Tanner Boser could have taken out Iwan Kutalaba down the stretch. Just knowing that Boser is historically very tough and he's dangerous and very fast. He looked fast as a light heavyweight, just not fast enough to avoid the speed of an established light heavyweight and Iwan Kutalaba. Kutalaba, I'm glad he got the victory because, again, he's one of those guys who is must-see television, as I said in the pre-fight interview. And I was worried about him actually being cut, if he lost. He's lost a lot lately, but he's always going to give everybody hell in round one at least. So it worked out for him here. He prolongs his UFC career, and I'm very fucking happy for it because despite being a vulnerable guy, against elite fighters, he's got 9 losses, finished in 7 of them, I believe. But he's going to hurt everybody, and he belongs in the UFC octagon. Pedro Munoz beats Chris Gutierrez. This was a kind of a dominant competitive fight, one of those weird ones. Pedro Munoz hurt him early on and definitely won round one, a good portion of it anyway, with grappling and the knockdown. But after that, I still think Pedro Munoz was leading the dance on the feet. This is just one where Chris Gutierrez was not able to fight long. Pedro Munoz was faster than he expected, and he was beating him to the punches and kicks, too. This was a good kicking battle. And I don't think it deserved all the boos that it got, unless, whatever, the fans were really behind Gutierrez, which I don't think they were. It was just a close fight between two high-level guys, and not a lot of big moments. It started off with a big moment, and then it didn't fall into like a sparring match, but it definitely lost some of its luster. Still, I was intrigued the whole way, and I was very impressed with Pedro Munoz. Pedro is a guy who has always been competitive. He lost 7 fights, all by decision, and most of those were very close, and every one of them is to an excellent fighter, world champion, contender, whoever. And my point is, he's underrated. He's underrated. For a guy with a 19-7 record now, even 20-7, he's very underrated. Always tough to get out of there, and a problem anywhere, on the feet, on the ground. He's got deceptive power. He's got knockdowns over Cruz and Gutierrez recently. Of course, knockouts over Cody Garbrandt, hurt Rob Font. He's got deceptive power, and he's got really good, competent striking, and some dangerous leg kicks as well. So maybe he was just a very unique matchup for Chris Gutierrez, but I feel like he's one of the few guys that could do that with him on the feet. Pedro, I'm glad to see him get a victory. And Chris Gutierrez, he's not going anywhere. He's 31 years old. He still banked a lot of goodwill with the fans with some very exciting fights, violent finishes as of late. But yeah, this was a setback. Pedro Munoz is one of those guys that you have to beat to get into that top 5. And Chris Gutierrez wasn't able to pass the test. And speaking of passing the test, Rafa Garcia passed the test. He passed the Clay Guida test and dominated him, pretty much, just beat him up. I don't think there were any real big moments in this fight. I don't think he was close to finishing him, but I don't think Clay Guida was close. I don't think Clay Guida won 1 minute of this fight. It was Rafa Garcia's fight from the very beginning. He busted Clay up. The whole fight was contested on the feet pretty much. Clay did attempt a few shots, got in on a single or two, and they were stuffed. But really, not a lot of wrestling not a lot of intent to wrestle from Clay Guida. He didn't even attempt a feint early on. It was just a striking battle from the beginning, pretty much. And then once he started mixing in the takedowns, he had already been hurt and had some of the fight beaten out of him. His face bloodied up. But nevertheless, I don't think Rafa Garcia was going to lose, was going to concede takedowns anyway. I think Rafa Garcia was just a guy in his prime or entering his prime who was too much for Clay Guida. Garcia's been very tough to put away, too, not a very vulnerable guy. And like I said in the pre fight interview, I think maybe his shitty cardio was a little, underrated. I think, he looked better in those losses after revisiting those losses he had in the UFC. So he's just a solid fighter, submission guy more than anything, but all round, maybe a difficult matchup for Clay Guida. Clay was not able to take down this guy, and again, he's built like a fucking bowling ball. So that eliminates a lot of Clay's options, and on the feet, he was just too slow. And Rafa Garcia, he had really sharp striking. He really did. I know it's easier to tune up Clay Guida than Drakkar Klose, but Rafa Garcia showed that he can be the hammer. He's already shown he can be the nail, but yeah, he's shown he can be the hammer on the feet. So this was a good victory for him. For Clay Guida, he did give us the false retirement, which pissed Dana White off because, they have very little TV minutes to give out, and Clay stole a few there. So that pissed him off, and that was kind of a dick move or whatever. But still, not a dick move, but whatever. Just he was a little absent-minded, I should say. Anyway, it was kind of funny, but I'm glad he's not retired because I don't know. He probably should retire, to be honest. But I like that Clay Guida. I like the fact that Clay Guida has the spirit to continue fighting. So that was the main card. Like, share, subscribe, all that horse shit. Check out my prelim video, which will be coming right around the corner.